Hello and welcome back to the Purpose Playbook. Today, I'm really excited to have Lisa Brown on the podcast. We first met, which seems like a lifetime ago now, at the Supported Living Conference that you were running. God, I mean, it was a few weeks ago, but
It was in November.
November, there you go. So a month plus ago.
Yeah.
And actually, both Brian and Pete were guest speakers at the event, and they found it an absolutely magical experience. I know Pete's done a lot of speaking, but Brian not so much. And the feedback afterwards was that they'd done a good job, and we had these brilliant conversations. And I have to say, I've been to a lot of events in my life. I've never really witnessed the power of a proper event and community until we went to yours. We were lined up with people who wanted to talk to us, and it was really humbling. Actually, it was really, all this hard work that you put into your business and what you do, to have a bit of validation off the back of that was really, really nice. So yeah, I could tell how passionate you are about making a difference in supported living, and it sort of shone through from the event start to finish. Your journey's been a bit of an interesting one, so I'm just going to tee it up and then we can get into it. But started out as a nurse, now a property investor, sort of helping people create supported living homes and sort of navigate what can be a really challenging process. Like, we've done it, we know it's tough, and yeah, you're making it much easier for others, and the impact you're having is incredible. So really glad you're on today, and looking forward to getting into it. Hello.
Thank you for having me here, and Happy New Year. Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so why don't we start at the beginning? I'd love to find out a little bit more about the early days. So what were you doing pre-supported living and the brilliant journey that you've been on, and sort of what was the talk me through what you did and how you sort of navigated from whatever it was you were doing to where you find yourself now. I'm always really interested in that part of the story.
It was completely by accident. Mine was completely accidental. There was no kind of planning or organisation in how I've ended up where I am today, really. I think I'm still sat here a bit stunned that I'm not a nurse, if I'm honest about it. I kind of feel like I should really. So yeah, I'd wanted to be a nurse for a long time. I did a nursing degree, loved nursing, loved working with people, I loved everything about nursing, to be honest. And apart from some of the night shifts, but I did lots of night shifts anyway. But I'd always wanted to be in an A&E nurse. I think probably you can blame Casualty for that. Probably going back a long way. I had my eyes on
Casualty, aren't we?
I know, I wanted to be Duffy. That was it. So yeah, I ended up as an emergency nurse. Loved working in A&E. But I was also dual qualified as a health visitor as well. So I was dual qualified as a nurse and a health visitor. Did a lot of A&E work, and then when my kids started school, realised that actually weekends were really precious. My husband at the time was a paramedic, and so we were juggling shifts, and that was tough. And so, weekends suddenly were really important. Anyway, we then decided to move to Devon, and so I started health visiting then when my oldest one started school, because like I said, we just needed some weekends as family time. Moved to Devon a couple of years later, and really struggled to get senior nursing work part-time, and I wasn't really expecting that. There's a lot of great things about being in Devon, but at the time, the way the community nursing system was running was they were like, you couldn't do a senior role part-time, and I was like, I've just done that for a long time. My younger son's visually impaired, and so childcare is always a bit more complicated. So I thought, right, I'm just going to take a bit of time out and have a think about what I'm going to do. I know I'll get a holiday let in the village we live in. It's really beautiful. I'm sure if I just spent, I could just run that whilst I sort the kids out, and then I'll go back to nursing. Yeah. Learned loads about holiday lets and went, I don't think I really want to do that. No, that doesn't sound like what I want to do.
Why? Tell me why.
I think it just sounded, I think it felt quite risky actually at the time. In hindsight, if I had bought the property I was looking at, probably would have done very well financially out of it. But it felt like the costs were quite high if we weren't going to have people in it all the time. The council tax was quite high. It was an expensive property. In hindsight, holiday lets did very, very well in Devon. And it would have been a good thing to buy. But there we go. So I then decided I'd do some just buy-to-lets and went on this learning curve, listening to podcasts, driving the kids around, reading books, learning about property, and then realised that what I'd done by accident for years is a kind of property strategy, which is why we'd ended up with bigger and better houses, because we kind of bought a house, done it up, moved on. So, that's a property strategy, is it? Oh, right, okay. And then ended up buying a couple of flats in beautiful heritage flats that were in a terrible state that didn't really have the planning permission. Brought those, split the titles on those, thought, great, this is what I'm going to be doing for life. Cornices and fireplaces and all these beautiful things. And then I got approached by a specialist housing association who said, it looks like you're a landlord in Devon. We've had a landlord pull out of a purchase of a bungalow for a young man with learning disabilities. Would you be interested in buying it? I just refinanced those flats, so I had some money to go again. And it sounded interesting. And I was like, yeah, let me find out more about it. Ended up buying this bungalow, developing it to meet this young man's needs. Loved every part of that. Loved getting to know the care team and his family and everyone else who knew him, and getting this property right, to exactly meet his needs.
Mm-hmm.
He moved into the property. Everyone was raving about how great it was for him. It kept him out of hospital. He'd been at risk of being admitted to hospital. It was a really, really positive experience. And I was like, brilliant, absolutely love this. Then I tried to take it off the bridging loan that I had it on and get it onto a mortgage. Couldn't get a mortgage. What do you mean I can't get a mortgage? It's just a bungalow. Yeah, but you've got a tenant there with learning disabilities. You can't have a mortgage. This is ridiculous. What do you mean I can't get a mortgage? And I can't get insurance. Is going to be really hard too. Why is insurance going to be hard? So I went on a bit of an exploration, I think is how you could describe it, to go, why is this an issue? Because at the same time, all the local care providers and the local commissioner was going, Lisa, this is brilliant. We need 3 more of these. Can you do us 2 in this area? Can you do us 3 here?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, no, I've just left all my money in this deal. What was quite a good property deal fell over.
So that now, it's now falling into place why at your event you had insurance there, you had a big talk around mortgaging and financing of the properties, because that's literally your trauma from having to go through it.
But it's everyone else's trauma as well in this space. It's the big barrier in supported living is getting proper finance, particularly if you've got someone who has round the clock care, particularly, and a lot of people do have round the clock care and need a home. And so I just thought it was a bit stupid. So I went on this, I don't know what you call it. I just went on a bit of a mission to find other people doing it, really. And got busy doing that, and then suddenly realised I hadn't done enough nursing hours to renew my registration. And I was like, I either have to stop what I'm doing, or I have to go and go back and do some nursing, or I have to stop. And I just decided at the time, actually, it wasn't the right time for me with the kids and everything else that was going on to carry on my registration. So I've not actually got a nursing registration, which feels like something I thought would never happen, but there we go.
Let's go back, because as you know, at Story Group we have some homes, supported accommodation, and a couple of children's homes. Not my part of the business, so I tend to sort of focus in other areas. Of course, I know it well, but I'm not into the details like some of the other guys and girls might be. Something that you said there sounded quite unique to me. You were offered a home, but it was for a specific person. So you almost, the way that we did it was we renovated our homes and then we went to market to fill them. So it must have been an amazing experience knowing that not only am I embarking on this creative project that's fun and it's going to be exciting, but actually, hey, there's a real human at the center of this. Like, what was that like? And how much input did that young person have, or young, I think?
Yeah, he didn't have a lot. He wasn't able to speak. He communicates non-verbally. So we were getting input from his mum and from his care team, and because he'd been in lots of inappropriate properties, the way he was expressing his frustration was by breaking furniture and breaking properties. And so he'd been moved repeatedly from unsuitable to unsuitable property. So he was, I think, in quite a highly kind of fluid state, really, and wasn't, so it was taking everyone else's input in then to go, okay, well, how are we going to make this work for him, and trying to get this right. So, yeah, I loved that process. I loved the fact that we had the name of this young man. We knew what his name was. We knew what he needed. We knew his favourite colours. We knew how we would, what we could do to make this property feel at home for him. And that was really powerful. And, it doesn't always happen like that, but it was because this was a specialist housing association, because they'd had it all lined up for this person. And when you do have people with more complex needs, sometimes it does have to be that you're buying a property for that person, because actually it's got to be in exactly the right area with exactly the right kind of, all of it needs to be, to meet their needs. So yeah, I loved that. I absolutely loved that process.
And I know you dabbled in a bit of property before, but was that the first big renovation? Like, how did you actually tackle the renovating and the customization that went on within the property? Were you fairly hands on, or was that how did you?
Yeah, and no, I mean, we'd done fairly big renovations of properties of our own previously, and then the flats probably were a bigger refurbishment, really, because they were in a terrible state, so we had to take them completely back.
You came with experience.
Yeah, so this was a probate property, so it was tired, and it needed things like it needed new windows and it needed rewiring, and but it wasn't a completely thing. But yeah, I was very involved in the process. Had really good builders who understood. Again, the thing was that I got everybody on board with the fact that this was this property for this young man, and so therefore everyone knew what they were doing. Everyone knew this was for him. We had a really tight deadline to get it finished by, to get him in, because he was being evicted. And, so in the end, my build team were literally working around the clock trying to get it finished to get him in. And we did, but we were, his care staff were moving his stuff in as we were literally trying to move building supplies out. But, it happens and it worked. So, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And it's amazing what a little bit of purpose does to bring people together and get that extra 10% out.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah. And that really gelled the team because everyone knew what was going on with it. Yeah.
So we'll get to the finance bit in a minute, but were there any other obstacles? Were there any moments you had when you were doing that you thought, oh my God, what are we doing here?
Well, even just the legals was a faff, but that's any property purchase, isn't it? I think you think, oh, it's going to be straightforward. We'll get this over the line. So that's why we had such a tight time scale to get the refurb done, because the legals had taken so long, because it had been a probate property, because of a whole host of things, some of which I can't actually remember at the time. You think they're etched on your brain, aren't they? They're scarred for life. Yeah. But then in hindsight, it's not such a bad thing.
I still believe that the whole property purchase process is ripe for innovation. I cannot believe it's as archaic as it is to this day. I mean, I was an estate agent many moons ago, and not much has changed. 20 years ago,
no,
really.
It really hasn't. And I know lots of people, lots of innovators say, oh, it's going to be completely modernized. But I feel like they've been having those conversations for at least 7 years. I think I've been having those conversations with people. And yeah, like you say, it really is still very much the same as it's been for decades. So.
It will happen.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you had a bit of an obstacle, sort of mortgage wise. How did you tackle it? What did you do?
Well, in the end, I ended up having a really good broker who was just my local broker, who just went, oh, we'll find something for you. But what happened was I also had a down valuation. So I had the wrong surveyor. In hindsight, I found out when I spoke to other property investors, they went, oh, no, you didn't have him, did you? That kind of where everyone knows his name. You're like, oh, good. So I had the wrong surveyor, but also on the wrong day, as in, he was in a really grumpy kind of, and then he couldn't see what we'd done. So he just said that I'd ruined the property, is what he'd said to me. And so he downvalued the property by about £60,000, which then turned what was a pretty okay property deal into really quite a bad property deal. So I ended up leaving an awful lot of money in that deal. That was the only way I could get it refinanced, which was painful. I tried appealing it, but anyone who's tried appealing valuations knows it's a real battle, and we didn't win that one either. So I learned an awful lot, like you do with every property transaction you learn huge amounts. So I learned a lot, and I just felt there must be a better way to finance properties. So that was my main driver, really, because I was like, who else is doing this? How else are people making this work? There must be other people out there doing this and making it work. So, so that's why I then went out and started trying to meet loads of other people who were doing it, really.
So how do you go from, I need to know more people because there's got to be some answers out here if we all group together, which often, by the way, the best ventures, the best communities always start with, I think we'd be better together. Like, let's get in a room, let's work stuff out. How do you go from there to it becoming a fully fledged business? I started searching all the property Facebook groups and just putting in search terms like supported living, assisted living. Couldn't find anybody talking about it at all. Nowadays, if you do it, you'll get about 1 million hits. But at the time, I couldn't find anyone. I was like, oh, this is nuts. So I set up a Facebook group as a kind of stake in the ground to go, right, okay, we're just going to call this a supported living property group and see who comes and see what happens, and started inviting people into that. And then that grew and grew. And then we were at the point of sort of the beginning of lockdown then, really, and suddenly the world and its great aunt was sat at home on social media. Facebook was pushing out groups like No Tomorrow. The algorithm was loving Facebook groups, so the group began to grow. And I thought, I think
I thought, well, I might as well start interviewing people who know what they're doing and learning from them.
Yeah.
So we started doing, I called them really unimaginatively, Lisa Lives in the middle of lockdown, just doing Facebook Lives into the group with people who had done stuff or might understand it. And then that morphed into a podcast and a YouTube channel and a whole host of other things. And it went from this kind of thing of me going, well, I need to find how to do this, so let me talk to people, to everyone going, oh, she must know what she's talking about because she's running the podcast. And then it's one of those things you realise actually that you suddenly do know more than everyone else because you've been gathering that information, and and people are referring to you as an expert, which is a really uncomfortable term for a lot of us, isn't it? It's like, oh, I don't really like that. But
it takes an awful lot to really refer to yourself as an expert. I think
it's really hard.
Kicks in, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. So that, and then on the back of that, I could just see I was being approached more and more and more by people saying, I need this, like loads of providers going, I need properties here, here, and here. And I could see loads of property investors going, I've got property here, I've got property here. To start with, property investors were quite suspicious of it and were a bit like, I don't really want to get involved with those kind of tenants, or I don't really want to do this. I'm not quite sure what she's talking about. But as you start explaining the benefits more and more and how it can work, people are like, oh, hang on, why am I not doing this? Yeah. And then, I could just see there was this real reason to sort of bring people together. And I started thinking, is that a matchmaking service? What is it? I set up a business with some other people, realised I wasn't working with the right people, and moved away from that. And then I set up the Supported Living Property Network because I felt there was a space for a community. What I felt we needed was providers of all different types, all different service providers. They can be charities and organisations and housing associations. You know, Rich, there's a whole range of different organisations who need property, aren't there, for a whole range of different support needs. They sort of sit on one side, and I felt they were having these conversations and the property investors were having their own conversations, and I felt like everyone needed to actually get together if we were going to solve this problem. And get people talking to each other, but also having sort of shared learning and going, actually, you're struggling with this bit of it, we're struggling with this bit of it. So actually, if we talk to each other, we're going to get more homes created out of that. And that's how the network kind of appeared, really. So
when was that?
The network properly started just over 2 years ago. So 2
years. I mean, as I said, I went to the event. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. It was full of people. There wasn't an empty seat.
No.
There were brilliant speakers. There were lots of people exhibiting. It's one of those ones where normally when you see one of these events finish, you see people dash for the door because they want to get the train home. No one's dashing.
No.
In fact, there was one point where I think at one point I looked over and Brian, my business partner, had a row of 5 people waiting to talk to him. And I said to Pete, do you know what? I'm going to go take 5 outside. I'm non-stop talking here. So I find it amazing that it's grown to that level of engagement in just 2 years. It takes years and years to build solid communities like that. What have been the, I'm sure it wasn't like that in the early days. Like what's that? What was the journey like? Like how much blood, sweat, and tears did you put into the growing of it and the marketing of it? Like, what did that look like?
I think a lot of time on social media, which isn't really my natural happy place. And people go, "Oh, but you're so good on social media, Lisa." And it's not. It's just kind of make myself do it, And
very evil.
Yeah, exactly. People say, "Oh, I can't do that," and you're like, "Well, you probably can. It's really not fun, but you just have to get out there, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it." So I think, I still do loads of social media, and we've not paid for any advertising ever. Really? So we've not paid for any advertising. So it's all really on social media growth and email growth. So it's about just. I think if you're aligned with your message and people feel, I think I'm very lucky in that people feel they trust me when they meet me. I think so I think people feel aligned. If they're interested in this, people seem to kind of jump on board with my vision fairly quickly, if that makes sense, or they don't. And it's not their thing, and that's fine, But I think it's not been a hard sell, like having to convince people that this is, what we need to do. I think it's been something that a lot of people needed as well. I think, I think there was very much a need for it. And it's just continued to grow and grow. It's like, oh, okay.
We're moving. We haven't actually spoken about the network itself and what it is and how it works and what people and access. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked about the fact that we're unique, I think, in the fact that we have providers and property investors into one community, in that we bring everybody together. But what I was passionate about is making sure people understood what they were doing. And so there's loads of access to training. I wrote training courses for network members to be able to talk to each other. Because what I'm seeing as this kind of growth in supported living is happening, in this interest in it, I'm seeing so many people jumping in who are not educated, don't understand what they're doing. And by educated, I'm not saying you have to do a 40 grand course with some training company, nothing like that. But I just think understanding actually what you're doing, because what we're doing is creating homes for people with support needs. And if we get it wrong, we get it wrong for people who've been let down repeatedly. And we're doing that again, and that's unforgivable. So as well as the fact that you're putting provider organisations at risk and property companies at risk if it goes wrong. So there's a lot. It's not like the most complicated thing in the world. I'm not trying to pretend it is, but there's things that need to be done right so that everyone is protected and that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And I'm seeing more and more people jumping in and not understanding that. So with the network, what I was passionate about was making sure we had access to high quality training. And I think maybe it's because of my nursing background. I don't know. I'm not very good at the kind of waffly, I'm going to talk for 5 hours and give you 20 minutes of information to try and sell you my 20 grand course that I might have decided that I'm going to make up tomorrow. That doesn't really interest me. So I'm more passionate about people having access to high quality training that actually helps people. So within the network, we have monthly training. We bring in like guest speakers who really understand certain areas of supported living. So every month there's training, every month there's online networking. So we bring people together. You don't have to go anywhere. You can stay in your slippers, but you can go and chat with people who are looking for properties or have property in the area you're looking for. Yeah. Then we have the conferences as well. And the conferences came out of the fact that people really wanted to actually physically get together. And so that is a member-only event. Only members can buy tickets for the conference. And then we have a property portal. So if you're a property investor and you've got properties, you can list your properties on the portal, which our provider members can find. And then equally, our provider members can go, I'm looking for a 3-bed property in Stoke-on-Trent. They can list that on the demand portal, and you as a property investor can reply to that. And we don't charge sourcing fees or instruction fees, which is what a lot of people do. So they'll charge a lot of really high fees. And it's more about bringing people together, and which is why it's just a flat monthly fee for people to join.
Which is why you've grown so quickly, because you've done it with purpose. You've had a vision. There's some really good intentions in there. You're looking to level up an entire industry, but you're not trying to, charge an arm and a leg for the process. It's so I can see why it's grown so quickly. So what are your plans? So you've obviously, I get the sense that you've sort of. You probably backed what you were doing, but you've grown quite quickly, and I could see from your face when you're talking about it, you're like, I just can't believe we're here.
It is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, oh, okay, where are we going with this? Yeah. And that, it's interesting, isn't it? Having time off over Christmas and New Year, because you do sit and reflect, and you kind of go, well, where are we going? And there was a little bit of me actually that was reading some of the Facebook groups where people are just spamming each other, charging stupid fees, not understanding what they're doing, not doing loads of non-compliant stuff. There was a little bit of the contrarian in me that over Christmas went, I don't think I want to get involved in this anymore. I think I want to just go and do something else. I was like, yeah, no, that's just stupid. But it's interesting
that, right? You're having a positive impact on that sort of stuff. So
yeah. Exactly. And that's what we're here about. So it's about having more impact, I think, and it's about being that voice in that all of this sort of melee that's going on, to just go, well, actually there is a way to do this and there's a way to understand it, but it's maybe not you've got to do it right, and you've got to learn how to do that right. And so
how do you measure impact in a business like that?
And that's what we've struggled with, to be honest, and we don't actually have measures, and that's what I would love to do. But by the nature of the fact that I don't hold on to all of those relationships, by the nature of the fact that I let people go off and chat to each other, I don't know how many homes have been created. And I'd love to have a concrete number. I know that at the conference, you guys had a number of the children's lives that you've impacted. And that's so powerful to be able to stand up and say that. I can't do that because I literally have no idea. And so there's part of me that's like, oh, how do I get that? And I don't think I can get it without holding on to everything, which isn't the nature of the network, really.
It's really difficult for you, because I would argue that you've impacted way more than we have. We've got a number, but it's only because we have it in a spreadsheet and we can literally track it. But your net over a 2-year period spreads far and wide, and
Yeah.
it's really difficult to quantify. I think, maybe it's a survey to all members that you sort of plead that they answer at the end of each year, but they don't.
They don't answer surveys. People don't answer surveys.
They
Even
don't.
people who intend to go, oh yeah, I'll do that later.
Yeah,
It's never the thing you get to in your email inbox, is it?
yeah,
So, I think it's almost the only way I think to do it would be to like employ a researcher to literally pick up the phone to people and go, but then you're going to have to go through all the past members, current members, and you've also got, I know that the 3-4 years before the network started, I was impacting lots of people on social media as well. So, we've had the podcast running. So yeah, impact is so hard to measure accurately, isn't it?
it
So
is. But you can be confident that you're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were sat there at Christmas, spare time, glass of cherry in hand. What are the plans for this year? Where's it going next? Is there any change, or is it business as usual?
I think it's much the same of what we're doing, I think, really, but kind of trying to grow it, trying to be that voice that's out there to help people. I'm being approached more and more by people when things are going wrong, and they're not necessarily members, but people going, oh, hang on, I'm going to message Lisa because I don't know what to do now. This has got, scary. So I think the more we can do to kind of educate and support people from the beginning and be that kind of like, this is how to do it right from the beginning, I'm hoping that will prevent more of those things. So I think there's that side of it. But then from a personal side of it is to grow more on the property side. There's a group of people who it's harder to create homes for. And those groups of people are people who have round the clock care. They're like the young man in my bungalow. And we need a lot more of those properties, but they're quite hard to finance. So my mission for this year, if people who've been following me on social media will see already, I've been going, right, so is to find investors who are, can we actually, rather than using the mortgage lending that doesn't seem to understand this space very well, can I work with private investors as doing sort of almost like private mortgages, giving people monthly returns on their funds, but they know that also they're getting really good social impact. I want to experiment with some different ways of funding some of these homes that are really needed. We've got 2,000 people stuck in hospital with a learning disability or autism who should be in their own homes. And one of the main reasons they're not is because of the lack of property that's right for them. And so we need to find these right homes for people. We need to get people out so they can live lives and be in the community and not be stuck in hospital. It's not right for anyone. We call ourselves a modern society, but actually when you look at how we're treating some people with more complex learning disabilities and autism, it hasn't evolved in many ways, and people are still incarcerated, whether that is a hospital rather than an institution. But really, what's the difference from their point of view? They haven't got a quality of life that they should have. So I really like to, and my mission is to try and experiment with how we can do some alternate funding models this year to try and buy and secure some more bungalows for some of these people who need homes, and see whether working in that way we can start impacting change a bit more as well. Because if we can get the model up and running for a few, then it makes it easier for everyone else to follow and do. And I kind of feel like I'm in the position I'm in where I'm quite respected and got quite a good following on social media. So people, if I can't do it, then maybe it's going to be harder for other people. So if I can do it first and show people how to do it, then everyone else can do it.
It opens the door. I've actually got someone I'd love to introduce you to, but I'll talk to you off air about that.
Okay, brilliant.
Let's talk about. There'll be some investors listening to this. Talk to me about the misconceptions people have about supported living, and anything that you think you could clear up really easily.
I think there's people often say to me, oh, it's easy for you because you're a nurse, and you, as a property investor, you're not dealing with the tenants directly. You are leasing your property to an organisation. So like you guys do, leasing that property, lots of care companies, charities, housing associations. So actually what you're doing is just leasing that property. So it ends up being a really nice, straightforward, hands-free property investment. So it's a really good way to hold property for the long term. So I think there's that misunderstanding around that. But then I think there's a misunderstanding also around that it's quick and easy and you can rinse and repeat it and do it really simply. And I think it isn't. Well, you'll know that it's complicated, isn't it, to get it right, and so I think there's that understanding that it's a great long-term hands-free investment, but in the shorter term it takes time to get set up in each scheme. There are ways to do it more quickly in some things, like maybe with people with maybe prison leavers or people who've been homeless, or something where you can do a little bit more of a rinse and repeat, where maybe the support needs are a little bit less intense.
Yeah.
But for other people, it can take a while to get each property set up and running. But saying that, then that's almost a lifetime investment, So sorry, you asked me a question. I've gone off on a tangent completely.
You answered it. You
Did I?
you
Brilliant.
answered it twice, actually. It's interesting talking about the investors, because something that Peter Licorinas, my business partner, inundated with investors all the time through the work that he does, and we often receive a lot of messages from investors. And what I've learned from working with Pete is that he is so choosy about, he's so he really takes his time to choose the right investor. And as a result, the type of investors that we've worked with at Story, they have purpose. They this isn't just investment for them. This is, I want to get into something because I have a bit of a purpose. And we've got 4 or 5 investors. Every one of them has a story. They all have a reason as to why they want to invest here versus anywhere else. They're still shrewd. They still want to make money. They're investors, but and what Pete's brilliant at doing is finding the ones that actually want to get into the industry for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I think once you do, you develop these incredible relationships, and it grows and it grows and it grows. So it's as I said, I think there's lots of people that want to do it, but finding the right ones is like it's a gem.
And it's really important that if you're going to work with investors, that you're a good fit, that there's someone you can work with, that you can have that long-term relationship, because things go wrong in property, don't they, so often. So it needs to be someone that you can pick up the phone to and go, actually, this has happened, and have that proper conversation about how, but that's a two-way thing. You have to be a good fit for them too. They have to be able to trust you and know that you are going to pick up that phone, not put your head in the sand and run away, with their money to the Caribbean for a month or whatever it is you might decide to do. You've got to make sure that you're a good fit both ways. So, yeah.
Have you worked with any people along this journey that have really helped you, like mentors or just people who've had a really good influence, or has this really been like a solo adventure?
Oh, so many people that, like, the conversations that you have with people that trigger stuff. And hundreds of people. This has come about through hundreds and hundreds of conversations, I think, is how the network started. It's not all my ideas by any stretch. It's like, oh, I'll take that little bit from that conversation was really helpful. And oh my gosh, they really made me think about things that way. So yeah, there are so many people. If I sat and wrote a list of the people I would need to thank, there are hundreds and hundreds of people, but there are so many people who have their ideas, or maybe you learn from people from the wrong way as well. You think, oh, that's exactly how not to do it. Brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we've certainly done a bit of that ourselves, actually. Either way, it's a learning curve.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, I appreciate your time today. I mean, this has been, as I said, when I'm pretty sure I messaged you like 2 days or even a day after the event saying I'd love to have you on here, because I think that part of what I'm trying to do moving forward, and a big plan of mine for 2025, is to find the purposeful people that are feeding into this sector and talk to them all like you did, but also at some point get them in a room, or I don't know what it's going to be. I haven't outlined that yet. It's too early in 2025, but I thrive off of the people that are doing good things with purpose within this sector. I really do. I think there's tons of them.
There's so many people,
and it's amazing. I've worked outside of this sector. I've worked in the sort of the more commercial world, you should probably say, and it's like pulling teeth half the time doing business. But the minute I stepped into this space, we all want the same things. We all want to help each other. And I think there's something there around how do we help each other get there quicker, faster, learn from each other in the same way that you've done within your sort of little niche. I sort of want to open that up, make it a little bit broader, and I know that you're going to be one of those people, because I just love the fact that this isn't a business for you. This is a quest. You're on a mission, and you're not going to stop until you've really raised those standards. And I love that. I really feed into that. So I'm really happy that you came on. I think people absolutely love this story. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Rich. Thank you.
No worries at all. See you soon.